Okay, let me jump in. This is the first week of a series we called Christmas on the Ledge. I used AI to build me a little ledge. It comes from a metaphor of Friends Church that says the traditional church is like a meadow for people. It's beautiful. It's like Disneyland for many people. But for some reason, the people who find Friends Church go, for whatever reason, that doesn't work for me. And so we have this metaphor of there's this kind of like cliff at the edge of the meadow and everyone else is having a great time and we're like, I don't know why, but it just doesn't fit. And so we climb down this cliff. We call it deconstructing. And on that, down there, there's a ledge that's Friends Church. And we do things differently. We probably do things wrong. I'm sure every other church says you guys are screwing it up. Maybe we are. But it works. It works for us. And so what does it look like to do Christmas on the ledge? I had this little write-up. Can you throw it up for me, Fran? I wrote it like this. There are two birth stories of Jesus. Two. People try and make them into one. Two very different ones. One featuring people who didn't fit in church. They were the ones on the ledge. They're us. The other includes those who didn't believe the right way or follow the rules of religion. Again, that's us. These are the people who showed up at the story of Jesus' birth, and yet we often skip past them. We think the Christmas story is all about the birth, but these authors, these two very different authors, bring two different stories, and it seems like they have a reason for it. They're not sitting there one day like, I got nothing better to do, so why don't I just add this part of the story? No. I think there's intentionality. And so I want to take that intentionality and bring it into our lives. Can you do the next page for me, Fran? This Christmas, we're tuning our attention to them, the ones on the ledge, the misfits, the outsiders, the ones looking for something more, capital M, more. We'll explore their cultures, their courage, and what their stories invite us to see about our own lives. Full disclosure, I don't really care about history. Apologies, Trevor. I know Trevor's always telling me that I should go to museums and read about history. I don't really care about history. I care about things that make my life better, that make me more skillful, that make me a better human being so I can spread that out from me. And so if I have to read history to figure that out, I'm in. And that's what we're going to do in this series. We're going to take stories that are ancient, that are old, and ask the question, let me just see how many kids are in here today. Not many. Oh, edit. Who gives a crap is what we're going to say. Every time I write a message, the thing I write in is 8. I call it who gas. Who gives a crap? Why do we care? Because these stories ask us a very important question. It calls us into a way of being this Christmas that is ringing my bell today. I was sitting with my wife last night and I was thinking about this message and I'm like, if I follow this message, I'm going to have to do some things different here. And that makes me nervous. That's scary. So to get there, let me bring you into the story. This is a story by an author named Luke. Luke was not at the birth of Jesus. He was not the drummer boy. The drummer boy also wasn't at the birth of Jesus. Well, maybe he was. We actually don't know. There's no reference from him. There's no drumming. What did Brooklyn say? Every birthing mother wants a little kid who can't play drums very well to come and play next to her, right? I'm not sure who came up with the drummer boy as a song. Luke essentially starts his it's not a history. It's a gospel. Think of a gospel this way. He says, I went out and I talked to a whole bunch of people who knew these stories. We don't know if they were there or not. We just know that he collected a bunch of stories. And I wrote them down. I think in modern language we would say at the beginning of a movie, this story is based on actual events. Is this actual events? Which part are actual events? But he's trying to tell us something. That part, I assume, there's some intentionality. He didn't just write this down because he had nothing better to do. So what's the intentionality? And how does that change my life and your life? So let me put it up. Can you throw up the clip for me? Or the slide? About that time, Caesar, this is from It's called a paraphrase. There's 3 different ways you can translate the Bible from Greek or Hebrew to English. One's a literal translation, you do word to word. Then one's a phrase translation, you try and get the meaning of the phrase right. This is a paraphrase, which means help me understand in normal language what's going on. So this is a paraphrase. He says, about the time Caesar Augustus ordered a census to be taken throughout the empire. So Joseph went from Galilee, town of Nazareth, up to Bethlehem with Mary, his fiancée, who was pregnant. Does it say anything about her being a virgin? Luke doesn't seem to care. Virginity is not on the map for him. Okay. While they were there, she gave birth to a son with a drummer playing next to her who played badly. There were shepherds camping in the neighborhood. This is where I want to focus today, on the shepherds. Can you throw up the next slide for me? Suddenly God's angel stood among them. Another way to translate angel is messenger. In the tradition, messenger is a very broad word. We think in terms of like angel with wings, like the Victoria's Secrets catalogs. We're not sure that that's what's going down. You can have a human who's an angel. Messenger. So, messenger shows up. Do not be afraid. I'm here to announce great joyful events that is meant for everybody. We think that because the angels are like glowy and then halo-y and stuff like that, like out of nowhere, it's like, bah! You know, they're scared. I actually think it's something else. Let me take you there in a second. A Savior has just been born. Okay, I'm going to come back to this, but I have to get you guys into a mindset first. I'm going to do it by creating a kind of a mental image for you. Bryce, can you come up for me? Bryce has been kind enough to act as my visual person. Anyone ever get put in the corner in their life? Put up your hands. Anyone ever got sent to their rooms? Yeah. Looks kind of like that, doesn't it? Nailing it, Bryce. In our culture, if we want to punish human beings, we make them sit alone. If they're really bad, we put them in a box alone. We call it solitary confinement. It will mess up a person's brain like nothing else. We think it's from when we were hunter-gatherer groups, small groups. Being alone meant death. And so this idea here is kind of like this old code inside of Bryce, and we can even feel it. Him sitting there and him sitting like that, you can kind of feel this like, ugh, I don't like that. There's this old code that says alone, ostracized, is bad. But let me show you how it shows up in our modern lives. A couple years ago, one of the groups I do a sport with, I was talking to one of them, and it kind of came out of nowhere. I was like, hey, there's this area in the States that we call like the Mecca of this sport. And I was like, oh, hey, we should go to this area this year. And kind of without thinking, he said to me, oh, we were there last year. And I realized I didn't get invited last year. You know the feeling? Something happens and you're not invited. Something happens at work, there's this celebration, and everyone's getting accolades, and you realize you're not on the list, but you were part of it. You talk to a good friend, and it somehow kind of leaks that they were in town a couple months ago and they didn't call you. Do you know that feeling of being excluded? Of being left out? Like that? We've always said, or no, we shouldn't say it that way. In the last year, I've been using this metaphor of parts. Parts of us, it's kind of like I have a certain voice that talks. When I'm excluded, my part gets angry. There's small children in the room, so I will keep my language PG, but there's a lot of F-bombs, there's a lot of screw thems, there's a lot of I don't need thems. Don't put up your hand, but anyone have a reaction that way? You hurt me. Now I'm rejecting you. Anyone have a part that says, see, you're a piece of shit. I told you, No one wants to hang out with you. No one wants to be with you. Anyone have that part that says, I cannot feel this right now. I need to drink. I need to do drugs. I need to go shopping. I need to do something else. I cannot live in this place. It's too painful. What are your parts saying? Sometimes when I say your parts, people are like, Vince, what do you mean parts? Because that part is so powerful inside of you that it's become you. And you're living in fear of this. Can you throw up the relational model for me, Fran? We have this model that says we believe in creating we relationships. You need I and you need they in balance to create we. So what happens for some of us is our parts say, we can't get to we, so maybe the I should be turned down a little bit. Anyone? Okay, don't put up your hand again. I'm guilty of this, especially in my intimate relationships. Turn down the I. Oh, if I don't talk like that, if I don't bring that up, if I keep the peace, then we can get to we. It's just a part saying, you can't be you and be in a relationship. Who you are isn't good enough, isn't right. There's something wrong with you. Turn that stuff down. That's the only way to we. Now, if there's no I, there's no we. We know it intrinsically. That's why when we go to a family gathering, when we have to turn down our I, we're exhausted when we come out. Because it's a lot of work to be someone who we're not. To be more charming than I am. I am not charming. If I have to be at a party and be charming, that takes a lot of work. And I'm not very good at it. How many of us there? Try for a moment and feel those parts. Probably they're saying, don't listen to Vince. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Just pay attention to me. But it comes from here, doesn't it? Okay, thanks, brother. Fantastic acting, Bryce. Why do I tell you about this exclusion part? Why do I want you to pay attention to the parts? The reason is this. Unless you can connect to that, you're going to miss this story. Shepherd has a different meaning in two parts of the Bible. Old parts of the Bible, not old, but like the more classic parts. We call it the Hebrew Bible because Old Testament sounds pejorative, but it's old. It's older. In old parts of the Bible, they were nomadic people. If you're a human, you were a shepherd. Because everybody lived or died based on having their goats and their sheep living. They would do incredible things to keep their animals alive. They would live with them. They would be in their house with them. Everything. Everyone's a shepherd. You're a shepherd. Everyone in this room is a shepherd. Old Testament finishes. There's a 300-year gap before we have new writing. New part happens. Something has changed in the culture. Something we're still dealing with today. And you have to understand this to understand that. We get the beginnings of urbanization. People go from living nomadically, where it's like you and your family and your goats and your sheep, you're all hanging out together. To no, we live in the city. Well, where does the goats go? Oh, we send them out. They're in the middle of nowhere because there's no room for them. And we start to get a new profession. This is something that, up until this point, this didn't even exist. The profession was shepherd. And a shepherd, in this part, the part of the story that Luke talks about, is a person who can live outcast. That's their job. They will not get invited to any parties. They will not get invited to any family gatherings. They will not be out there with their friends. This is not a bush party like we're thinking from, when we were kids. This is a human alone in the middle of a wilderness trying to keep the wolves and the lions from eating their animals. Sometimes it wasn't even their animals, it was somebody else's animals. These were people who were ostracized from their culture, from their communities. They live alone. And then now and again, maybe for Christmas, two of them, they'd take like my sheep and goats here, and your sheep and goats, you'll put them here, and then we'll kind of like line them here, and then me and you will sit, like I'll be on my goat side, you'll be on your goat side, and we'll light a fire in between us, and we'll hang out. And that's the only contact we might have had for weeks with another human being. Think about that life. Think about it through the lens of that feeling right over there. You are not a part of the world. You have not been invited to anything. When people came to town, they didn't call you up. You are the outcast. Now, here's the flip I want to do with you. I want you to hold on to that feeling, but I want you to think of this story as a metaphor, not a historical thing, but as a metaphor of us. When we read the shepherds in the story, I want you to bring that part of you into the story. That part of you that hates to be excluded, that doesn't want to be an outcast. Doesn't mean introvert, extrovert. This can be with one friend. And when you read the story through that lens, the story shifts. And suddenly things change. Can you put up the next rendering I did? There were shepherds. This is the part of us that hurts when we've been excluded. So this isn't a bunch of humans you don't know in history. Think of it this way. The part of you that sits in the corner, that you don't bring to the party, that you hide, that you're embarrassed of, that you think is too much, not enough. That's you in the story. It's me in the story. They were camping in the neighborhood. I love how he says neighborhood. It's not the neighborhood. It's in the middle of nowhere. Think, who was in Wipers? You were just in Wipers. You hunted a deer out in Wipers, right? Think that's where they are. It's days of travel to get to anyone like their family. They're in the middle of freaking nowhere. That's how our parts are. We shove them so deep inside us. That's the part that comes. And suddenly, God's angel stood among them, and they were terrified. Well, of course. I'm sitting over there by myself. Think of yourself in solitary confinement, and all of a sudden someone jumps in, flips on all the lights, and says, "Ha!" You're like, "Oh, I was trying to deal with my stuff here." That's what I'm trying to do to you today. I'm trying to call into those parts that you've hidden, that you're embarrassed of, that you won't talk about. And said, "Hey, I see you." The angel said, "Don't be afraid." Does that make any sense? Of course we're afraid. Don't be afraid. It's not helpful. Anyways, that's a side note. I'm here to announce a great and joyful event that's meant for everybody. We are invited. What does it mean to bring that part of you into the world? Are you scared? I sure as heck am. I've hidden those parts there for reasons. And the reasons make a lot of sense to those parts. And this story that says, no, the angels, the spiritual journey calls those parts into the culture, into our lives, into the rest of us. Of course I'm scared. It's terrifying. Can you do the next slide for me? The shepherds, our excluded parts, talked it over. This is the part I think we miss in the story. Has anyone ever thought deeply about the talked it over part? It's like, well, you're part of the Christmas story. You got invited to go see Jesus. Talk it over. It's like, duh. But when you read it through the lens that I'm trying to read it through, my excluded parts, I'm saying, hey, come into the story. Come. That part's like, hell's no. There is no way. I hid this for a reason. I have not talked about this for a reason. I don't share this for a reason. I hide this for a reason. The talked about part in this story suddenly becomes a very important part. Someone said to me this week, or a couple weeks ago, my part makes some very good points. Anyone notice that? My part's like, yeah, I won't be coming to the Christmas gathering because they don't like it. And I'm like, well, you're not wrong. But when the I is like this, can we ever get to we? I don't think so. Someone once said to me, oh, Vince, we is just they, right? Can you hear in that comment that they've turned down the I for so long, they don't even know what that looks like? There's not a part sitting over there. They are sitting over there. And what we see is a husk. And the way I'm reading the Christmas story, this part, the Lukean part, is to say, what if we call those parts in? What would that look like? Is there going to be some talking it over? Yes, there's probably some talking it over going on in your head right now, right? Someone's part, and you don't need to put up your hand, although you can all put up your hand, is saying, Vince is full of crap. You don't need to pay attention to him right now. There's nothing of value to you. You just ignore him. Your life will be better. Anyone feel that talking over in their head? And yet, if we see it the way I'm seeing it, this is a metaphor that says we are being called, those parts of us that we have exiled, that we've thrown in the corner, that we hide, we're calling that back into our worlds, into our lives. What could that look like for you this Christmas? Maybe it's as simple as saying, I know I usually bring this to the Christmas dinner, but actually I would like to change it this year to something else. In some families, that's like, well, you just killed baby Jesus. How dare you? Can you feel that? The eye comes up a little bit. It's like, and yet, we cannot find, let me say it softer. I don't believe we can find we without the I. I was running yesterday up in West Bragg, and I was listening to Esther Perel. And she has this line, she says, the quality of your relationships is the quality of your life. I stopped. I dug my phone out of all my layers, and I paused, and I was like, oh my. This call from Luke to say, bring your parts back in, bring the exiles back in, bring everything back in, isn't just this spiritual work to find we. What if she's right? What if this impacts your entire life? Then we can understand how our spiritual ancestors say to us, wait a second, if you do this, we think of it as a spiritual good somehow. But what if it's bigger than that? What does it look like to bring the exile back in? To be yourself. Let's not go black and white. To be more yourself. Maybe it's to share when you're upset, not through anger, but through honesty. Hey, you saying that is really scary to me. Maybe it's I had a conversation with the person whose the eye was really low. Maybe it's, hey, this is what I've been thinking about a lot lately. Can I share it with you? Knowing that they don't necessarily want to talk about that. That's a bit of a mind. I want to talk about something, even if that's not your favorite thing to talk about. Don't put up your hand, but has anyone been trained to only do and ask for the things from the people around you that you know that they want to give you already? I don't think that's we. I think that's being taught to focus on they and turn down the I. Maybe this year it's saying no to things. Actually, I don't want to do that. Now, if this is new for you, chances are you'll do it a little like me. I hold this inside, but my brain's keeping score of how many times I've dialed things down. And the resentment is growing and growing and growing and growing and growing and growing until I'm like ready to say something, but I don't say it nicely. I have held 3 weeks worth of crap in there. And when it comes out hot. I am mad. I am angry. And I want my way now. This is not what I'm talking about. I am a cautionary tale. This is before you have to rev yourself up enough to be able to say it, saying it and saying, hey, could we do something different? And being able to hear the other person say, actually, I don't want to change this. And then you learn the beautiful spiritual skill of figuring out how to live together. We try and shortcut this all the time. I'll just let the resentment grow until I have enough anger to make it happen. Boom! And you can't say no. I have held this in time for, right? You all felt that? Actually, maybe only I'm the angry one. There's a few angry ones in here, I'm pretty sure. Instead of going, hey, wait, I'm going to ask for something that I know you don't necessarily want or like. But as an act of creating relationship with you, I'm going to let this spiritual life call that back in. The Christmas story says, the angel of God, the messenger of God, called it back in. Will you come to this event fully? Will you bring all of yourself into these moments? And then negotiate it beautifully. That, I think, is how we get to we. Not by turning down the I. Not by working ourselves up so the I is so loud there can be no they. It's sharing it before it gets there and saying, hey, this is truly who I am. Can I be here today? Today I'm going to finish and say it this way. May we hear the story from Luke that, at least in my reading, calls the exile in all of us, the pieces of the puzzle that we have not brought into our relationships and into our lives. May we call them in today and this Christmas, knowing that there is going to be a conversation that says, wait a second, I don't know if I want to do this. The shepherds talked it over. Your parts will be talking it over too. May you do that work so that we can be fully present. The I is fully there with the they. And we navigate that to we. May that be our Christmas